The Art of Being Ruled. Wyndham Lewis. Original publication 1926. 1989 edition. Narrated by Skeptical Waves. Part 8. The Vicious Circle. Chapter 6. The Taboo on Generic Terms, and the Abstract Creature of Democracy. As the result of the feminist revolution, feminine becomes an abusive epithet. When you say that the salon world, society, is essentially a feminine world, you encounter that difficulty for which provision has already been made. The number of generic terms that you may not use increases daily. This is natural in a period of radical upheaval. Classifications which people wish to transcend are indicated by them, so when you say feminine it is as though you said women before the revolution. Any term of differentiation is taboo. The recognition of the human standard of industrial standardization, the abstract man without narrowing specifications, is de rigueur in forms of address. That is the ultimate stage of the democratic system. It is not, I need not point out, what we regard as the goal of revolutionary thought. For us, as for Sorel, it is the last decadence of that false revolutionary movement that began with the great monarchies of Europe in the 16th century. It is of the essence of democracy, not of radical social revolution and non-democratic revaluation. The central question, then, is still, and in this part of our discussion as much as elsewhere, that of differentiation or non-differentiation. Some things, which from every human standpoint we should regard as bad, feeble, corrupt, or even imbecile, we should nevertheless regard as good and profitable in their destructive capacity. But their essential degeneracy remains. They are, like the mercenaries, to be got rid of as soon as possible. So, with these things in mind, we can go on with our questions. Whether it would be better, as it appears to you, if the world were peopled by and society composed of persons differing from each other in certain well-marked ways, not necessarily the ways in which they have so far differed, perhaps very different ones or modifications of them? Or would it amuse you more if they were all on one pattern? Sex is one of the capital respects in which people differ from each other. And as far as sex is concerned, one of four things can happen. People can either be divided, 1, into men and women as we know them, into people, roughly, like President Roosevelt, Nurmi, Dempsey, or Bernard Shaw, to take at random some notorious men, on the one hand, and Signora Deuce, Lady Diana Manners, Jane Austen, and Mary Queen of Scots on the other, to take some celebrated women, or, 2, they can resolve their secondary sex characteristics and become either all feminine or, 3, all masculine, approximating to one or other of the poles illustrated above, or, 4, evolve some one undifferentiated human type, at least as far as sex went, unlike either of the two that we know. At present a fusion is taking place, carried to its logical conclusion, it would result in a standardization on the feminine side of the secondary sex barrier. This appears to me a less promising adjustment than that which number 4 of my table would produce. No animosity to women, but rather a feeling of the psychic lopsidedness that would result, accounts for this preference. Perhaps the exact half and half would be a solution not so good, I believe, however, as number 4. The latter would involve a new creative element. It would not always be reminding people what a close shave it was that they had not divaricated to one side or the other. As I am not occupied with prophecy, but with things as they present themselves today, it is with the second eventuality that we are confronted, that is, with an increasingly feminine world. This, under correction, would be more puritanic and fastidious, more excessive and emotional, than a masculine one. No make-weight of typical masculine phlegmatism would deaden it. More uniquely alive to the things of the moment, more docile and mercurial, more burdened with and swayed by the tidal movements of the unconscious, finally, more unconscious, less intellectual, that is what, for convenience, I call feminine. Once more, perhaps, it will be better to insist that it is not meant that, 1, all women are more emotional than any man, 2, that some cannot be as indifferent to hamperingly polite rules as the standard man, 3, that women cannot be as phlegmatic or as highly intellectual as that same not very inspiring standard. A miner or drayman gets from his occupation a certain body and habits, and the majority of women get certain well-defined characteristics from theirs, both inherit others. So we can forbear from argument as to whether the drayman could not be made into a picture postcard beauty, or the woman made to support the heaviest drudgery. We know that the women of Dahomey are reported, or were by Burton, to be hardier and more masculine than the men, and to do the heavier fieldwork, and that if the drayman makes his fortune, his grandson, who goes to Eton, is not so big and rough and may become very small and smooth. We are obviously talking of realities as we find them, and not as some interested propagandist would arrange them. The European ideal of force, even when it has the majesty that was given it in Renaissance art, is not so much favored in the scheme outlined here as forms slightly less monotonously martial and heroic. Especially I think the present moment is inappropriate for insisting on this masculinity. Its weakness we must, as Europeans, have found out recently, unless very blind indeed. So far from wishing to engage in propaganda for the physical standards of the policeman, I would rather see these monuments to the vanity of physical force abolished and have nothing but policewomen. Also, those battleships that today can keep no enemy that matters out of a country get up the nose of any patriot. The really powerful modern enemy contents himself with buying a rail and ship ticket, and is propelled or dragged comfortably into your fatherland, while the battleships, flashing their bullseyes over the waves, go rolling majestically round the coasts. When you behold these traditional symbols, therefore, can they appear anything but animated satires on the poor European's obsession of the efficacy of the physical? It is even astonishing that that bubble, which is a beetle or a John Bull, was not pricked by some little Charlie Chaplin like Pin long ago. So alas for our helpless, childish, masculine idols of force, then.